What was your initial reaction when Michael Flynn resigned last night?
Well, it was either going to happen fast or it wasn't going to happen at all. And there was this 48-hour period in which it had brought itself to a head that the White House had to do something. Number one, the press people were getting too many questions. The chief of staff is hard to focus the agenda. The president's getting dogged down by it. The vice president's credibility was compromised by it based on an interview that he gave on January 15th. And it just continued to build up. And I think they tried to diffuse it. When I say 48 hours, is that there was an apology by Flynn, but that still didn't do it. And I think it was very corporately handled. This is a typical business guy who runs a big company, who doesn't want to take any crap, who says to the vice president, not in this case Pence, but the vice president of the company, hey, buddy, you got me in a hell of a spot. You gotta fix this. This isn't on me. This is on you. And I think that's what Trump, as loyal as he is to his people and as close as he is to Michael Flynn, that's really what happened. At the White House today, there were so many signals that that's the way it was going, that, they exhausted every effort they could to keep Michael Flynn, but the trust just kept eroding and eroding. And finally, the president just said, you know what, you got to resign. I'm not going to fire you, but the right. He gave the general an opportunity to do the right thing, which he did. Whether he lied or whether it was an error in judgment or a miscommunication or anything like that, you can draw your own conclusions. The fact is, the vice president of the United States, who has to have credibility with people on Capitol Hill when he says something, when he goes out on a national television show and backs up what Michael Flynn told him, the national security advisor, and then it comes out to be not completely accurate or on target, that creates a problem for not just the vice president, but for the entire administration, because stories like that aren't going to go away. And then you throw in where the Democrats are. The Democrats, and it was very interesting today at the briefing that Sean Spicer was saying that they exhaustively looked at this and there was nothing illegal. It wasn't the fact that he wasn't doing his job. It wasn't the fact that he didn't know how to do his job or incompetent. It was all about a trust level, and there was nothing illegal about it. And so you take the Democrats, who are looking for anything illegal connected to Trump. I mean, they're looking for an impeachable offense, and no one is reporting it that way in Washington. The Democrats are on the prowl. They are looking for an impeachable offense on this president because they hate him. And they're going to look, and now they're asking for an investigation. But now you're seeing Republican leadership push back, saying, well, we're not going to go so far as a special investigation on Michael Flynn. But Elijah Cummings disappoints me, the congressman from Maryland and a longtime leader on the Democrats in the caucus in the House, saying that RT is the problem and we're part of a propaganda arm and Flint was having secret talks with Russia. That is complete bullshit all across the board. And I'm disappointed that the Democrats can't come up with something better than that. We're in the midst of trying to save health care. We're in the midst of trying to make sure that people keep their insurance and create jobs and everything else. The president's deregulating everything, every piece of paper he can get his hands on. And here are the Democrats talking about FBI investigations because they're powerless. And so they're doing everything they possibly can to find an impeachable offense or something ethically wrong with the Trump administration. That is clearly the Democratic strategy right now, and I think it wears pretty thin. I mean, you even got Bernie in there saying some pretty unruly things. And I just, issues are what people care about. That's what Trump won on. Trump won on the issue of trade. He won on the issue of jobs. He won on the issue of the media's lying to you, which we have found out that they are. Let me give you an example of the media lying. Last night when the Flynn resignation unfolded and the media was all over it, I'm watching the different networks, and on CNN, Michelle Kosinski is reporting that she talked to a Russian official and they can't believe that this is happening. And she quoted a Russian official. That is an absolute lie. CNN does more non-sourced reporting than any other network I think I've ever seen. Sources are telling us, we're hearing here in the newsroom, and people are telling us, and unconfirmed, unsubstantiated, people that don't want to be identified. And they throw this stuff out there, and it whips the lawmakers up into a frenzy to come to a conclusion. Well, somebody on the network said this, so it must be true. And I think that's just as dangerous as anything else. Back to Michael Flynn, I don't think that he was doing anything with the intent to hurt the country. I don't think that he was doing anything to be adversarial to the United States. He loves the country. And the way they're talking about him, you think that they hand out stars and bars to people like they're, popsicles. The guy's a general. He's a retired general. He was hired by Obama to be the head of Defense Intelligence Agency. The guy knows more about intel than probably anybody now because he's been right in the ring of it all. And he had the confidence of the president. And he's had the ear of Donald Trump since the beginning of the campaign. So I think that a lot of this stuff is going to eventually unwind. But I think that the president, in the end, just had to ask for the resignation, give him a chance to resign, and not put the president in a position where he had to fire him. That's not where the administration wanted to be.
Do you think this sends then a message to other administration officials where, like you said, it's not that they did something wrong per se, but it was more so it's a trust factor.
Well, they would hope that our government wouldn't lie to us. Mm-hmm. You would hope that this is a message to everybody else in the Trump administration. You would hope that this is a message to anybody that is in a position of authority, that you don't resort to half-truths or not telling the complete story, or they're showing the complete package, or making sure there's full disclosure across the board. But in line with that, the Democrats now want to go after Kellyanne Conway for ethical issues because she said something about buying Ivanka Trump's material on a morning show. Give me a break. That's scraping the bottom of the barrel. And I'm as liberal as anybody you'll find, but I think as a reporter, you got to call that out as bullshit for what it is. And so, I think there's a real message to people in the Trump administration. Don't put the vice president or the president in an uncompromising position with half-truths or even lies. It's not going to work.
And I think, to what you were saying there about, the ethics and the Democrats having no avenue to move forward, I mean, is that they're going to try and catch them up in bipartisan or nonpartisan organizations like the Government Ethics Organization, where they're actually, because they don't have the power to even impeach. They don't have the power to vote down legislation. They don't have the power to block pretty much anything at this point in the Senate. They go to their opposition.
Well, I think the Democrats, the they're disloyal opposition. Some people might say. No, they're political opponents, is what they are. The correct verbiage. They're looking for any morsel of information that they could get to that they believe would swing the people away from the Trump administration and vote against them in the midterms. I mean, let's face it, the Democrats are powerless right now. They're down to the people. They're down to convincing people. Number one, voter registration and a lot of town halls and a lot of the visibility. I think that the American people have had it with investigations. I think that they've had it with agencies going after people. They want to see their government work. And I also think, getting back to the Flynn resignation, the reason why the president sat on this for so long, a number of days, is because he wasn't pressured to get rid of him. He didn't have to. There's nothing illegal. They made the determination that there were no laws broken. This Logan law that goes back centuries is so archaic, it's ridiculous. Barack Obama was meeting and talking to world leaders before he was sworn in as President of the United States. But the key there is that he was a senator. And he was on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, so that gave him some cover. But we all knew what he was doing. He was meeting with before the campaign, during the campaign, with foreign leaders, and using his position to do that. Well, okay, so there was some pre-work being done by some administration officials, and it's pretty standard operating procedure, and I don't think that a general, as decorated as Michael Flynn is, was out to hurt the United States in any way. And I think that there are some really leapfrog conclusions taking place on the left right now on opponents. But I think that you're going to see these groups pop up that are going to be well-funded by liberals that are going to try to go after every morsel of information they can to unseat the Trump administration.
And I think just one more thing, moving forward now that Trump has the interim national security advisor in Keith Kellogg, and he might be an option to fill that seat. But one of Trump's campaign promises was improving these relations with Russia. And that was actually something Michael Flynn was very, very strong on. He had the relationship, whether you like it or not. He did have that relationship. Does this kind of put that in jeopardy now that he has to find an advisor who may or may not find that? People talk about people like Bolton, even though he's really probably not an actual person, but who is so far against,
It's going to be a long road to normalize relations with Russia. The stated position right now of the Trump administration is that they want Russia to give up Crimea back to Ukraine. That isn't going to happen. The Crimean people have voted. 93% of the Crimean people voted to rejoin the Russian Federation. The Western media reports it as if it was an invasion. Well, not one shot was fired and not one person was killed. So whatever your terminology, you can call it Russian aggression, or you can call it a different kind of democracy that this country isn't aware of. So there are factions on Capitol Hill that don't want to see Russia and the United States improve relations because it supports the industrial military complex and the military machine, and that's a lot of jobs in this country, and having a strong military is so vitally important to the economy. And I think that those factions understand that, and that's why it's going to be hard to normalize relations. I think Syria is a big linchpin. Clearly, the Trump administration has a different view of Assad than what Obama did. That's going to take months to work itself out. I think the visit tomorrow by Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House is a very important meeting. Israel's going to come looking for some guarantees and some assurances. And if you know Netanyahu, he's probably going to come with a few plans and a few suggestions for Obama in dealing with Assad and dealing with the Iranian issue. So there's a lot to play out here. And some days I think it's a powder keg. Some days I think everything's going to work out. But there's a lot of players on the table right now, and I don't think that Trump is going to allow this to be viewed as uncertainty. He'll assure these world leaders that everything's okay. If you look at who Trump has met with so far, Theresa May, Great Britain. Well, she goes home and passes Brexit. All right. Shinzo Abe from Japan. Apparently, there's really no big story or controversy coming out of that. And now Israel. And the Canadian Prime Minister. They were singing each other's praises yesterday when I was at the White House, talking about commerce and trade, and the NAFTA agreement is going to be better for Canada and vice versa, and we don't have the problems with Canada that we have with Mexico. So if you add it up in totality, things seem to be going pretty good with President Trump and these world leaders that he's meeting with, and these leaders of other countries. So giving him the benefit of the doubt, we'll see how it goes. So far, so good. And now if he can strike that same accord with Russia, it's a positive thing, which what he has said all along. I think that the president is going to probably give some assurances to NATO. And I think he's probably going to give some assurances to Putin that these are all stand-up operations and not aggressive, and they're just defensive measures. So we'll see how it goes.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I think that's good. Anything else you want to cover there, Ed?
Well, I think the White House should call on me more for questions.
You got one today.
I have the questions.